I call the meeting of the Environment and Natural Resources Finance and Policy Committee to order. A quorum is present. Who wants to move the minute? Representative Purcell, do you want to move the minutes?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Representative Purcell moves the minutes for March 13th, 2024. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion prevails. The minutes are adopted. Members, we have a full agenda today. We're going to try to stay on time. We'll allocate about 2 minutes for each testifier. What I'll do is when we get to the end of 2 minutes, I'll lightly tap the gavel here, and then your time is up. First up is House File 4409, Representative Agbaje, grant program established for pilot projects to encourage and increase composting. We're allocating about 20 minutes for this. I will move that House File 4409 be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill. Representative Agbaje, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I'm here today to present House File 4409, which promotes composting in multifamily housing. For cities and towns that offer composting throughout the state, it's not always available to those who live in multifamily housing properties. In order for zero waste to become a reality, we need all Minnesotans pulling together toward that goal. This bill proposes and appropriates $5 million in competitive grants to create a pilot program that will provide us with data about how to further encourage composting in more than just single-family homes. It's also a bill that will continue Minnesota on a path towards zero waste. Whether in rentals or condominiums, people who live in multifamily buildings currently have limited access to composting. Because their building does not make composting easy, similar to trash or recycling, many building residents think that they cannot participate. And because sometimes many of those people who live in multifamily buildings don't have access to green space, they may not know what to do with that compost even if they started one. This bill allows for more buildings and more organizations working with buildings to promote an easy way to compost, even in such a residential setting. The bill also provides an education program in each participating building to teach people how to compost, which is crucial to ensure that people understand how to compost in a way that, and to encourage them to do it more often. We can get to zero waste in Minnesota, but we have to make it simple for people living in all types of situations to do so. And so I thank you for the committee's time and appreciate your support. And with that, I'll turn it over if there's any listed testifiers or questions.
Andrea Lovell, Minnesota Environmental Justice Table. Welcome, and state your name for the record.
Thank you, Chair Hansen, members of the committee. My name is Andrea Lovell, speaking for the Minnesota Environmental Justice Table. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today in favor of House File 4409 and thank Representative Agbaje for bringing forward this bill. I want to start by telling you all the first time that I figured out that I came from a poor family. It's really an interesting social experiment to ask your friends the first time they learned about economic class differences. I grew up without generational wealth. My parents were not homeowners and they were divorced. So I spent part-time with my mom in her one-bedroom apartment and part-time with my dad in his one-bedroom apartment. For the vast majority of my childhood, I spent the time in those apartments. I know some of you are wondering how that worked. Basically, I had bunk beds at my mom's house and I slept on the couch at my dad's. The first time I went to a friend's house for a play date in kindergarten, I learned that she and her brother and her parents all had separate bedrooms, and her dad had a separate room as his home office. They also had a food pantry and recycling, and they had a compost bin. To me, learning how to exist in their kitchen was like visiting an entire other country. Unfortunately, in our country, living in an apartment building or being a homeowner is what determines your access to services that allow you to participate as a good environmental steward of the planet. And that is what makes economic class a factor in environmental justice. We all know that recycling and composting are good, but if you can't afford to be a homeowner, you are often not even provided with the choice to do the right thing. Representative Agbaje's bill is making a small step so that we can give more people the choice to be good stewards of our planet, whether or not they have a food pantry or their own bedroom. Please support House File 4409.
Thank you. Kirk Kudelka, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Proceed.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Kirk Adelka. I'm Assistant Commissioner with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. I want to thank the author for the work on multifamily housing and composting. As you may know, we have a 6.1 million ton waste problem, and our way to get to the recycling goal, especially in urban areas like the metropolitan area here of 75%, is through increased recycling. One of our largest challenges are multifamily homes because of sometimes the systems are not in place or the additional information is not tailored toward their specific needs compared to a single-family home. And so appreciate the author's support on this and very happy to continue working with the author on the bill.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wants to speak for or against the bill? Anyone else? Members? Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a couple of questions on a number of different lines. I'll just start on 1.16. I'm seeing that this is a pilot project, and I'm wondering, as the bill describes it being a pilot project, if the author might consider putting a sunset on the program so it could be reviewed at some time.
Representative Agbaje.
Thank you, Chair Hansen. Thank you, Representative Heinzman. I do believe that there's also a report that's established in the bill. So at the time of the report, that will probably also be the end of the project. Just looking at the line number. Yes, 2.27, 2.28. The report is due by the earlier of October 1, 2027, or 3 months after the appropriation of this section is exhausted.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the answer, Representative, but I'm frustrated because I'm reading starting 2.22 all the way through 2.28. But it looks to me like it could be that the report is not required. And specifically, the word that I'm being thrown off by is in 2.26, where we're being told that it is, if possible, the results of the grant with respect to encouraging composting, so on and so forth. That would be great if we could clarify that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Heisman. That's a great point. We can look at updating that language so it becomes a required report.
Representative Heinzman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So back to my first question. So it doesn't appear that there was a sunset necessarily, especially considering the word "if possible." Maybe you would consider a sunset to this language. I understand it's being laid over, but I'm just trying to wordsmith this thing a little bit so we don't wind up with something on the books that looks like there's a couple of problems.
Representative Agbaje.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think right now we're looking at October 1, 2027, which is already in the bill, so we can update the language to make that the time when the grants would expire or something like that. But that's something we can work on, so I'm happy to take further language from you.
The bill is being laid over, so you're able to work with folks to clarify.
Nothing further, Mr. Chair.
Representative Jacob.
Thank you, Chair Hansen. In the city of Winona, they have, I'm sure you've heard of farm to table. They've got table to farm, where their program is this waste goes to hog farms. So will this impact those programs that are already established?
Representative Agbaje.
Mr. Chair, Representative, no, it should not. These would be new programs to help encourage more people to do composting similar to that program.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members? Any closing comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members. As noted, this bill will be laid over, so happy to take any comments and considerations from folks that have them. Thank you.
I renew my motion that House File 4409 be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill. The bill is laid over. Representative Hornstein, House File 4932, management of wasted food provided. You're making good time, Representative Hornstein.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. I guess this is compost day here at the Environment Committee. I do have an amendment, Mr. Chair, to the bill, the A2.
First, I will move the House File 4932 be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill. Representative Hornstein, the A2 amendment, it's my understanding that you have checked with Chair Becker-Finn, and it does not need to go there. So we can adopt the amendment. So I would move the A2 author's amendment to get the bill in the shape they would like. Any questions on the A2 amendment? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. The A2 amendment is adopted. To House File 4932 as amended. Representative Hornstein.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. I'm very excited about this bill. It really moves the needle on composting, particularly food waste composting in the state. This is an initiative from the Pollution Control Agency, and I first heard about it earlier this year and said, boy, this sounds great. I'd love to carry it. So this is, again, part of the executive branch's initiative. And I just want to start, Mr. Chair and members, with just a couple of statistics about wasted food. First of all, 33% of municipal solid waste in Minnesota is organics, and a large part of that is wasted food. And so that's winding up in landfills and garbage burners. Nationally, the EPA says that only 5% of food waste is composted. Incredible. Of all of this, only 5% is composted. And finally, the last statistic I want to share with you is that 30 to 40% of edible food is wasted in the United States, and that's or in Minnesota. And then there's also similar data from the Natural Resources Defense Council, which did a landmark study on food waste. So House File 4932 is really designed to get at this problem, and it is the most comprehensive approach that we've taken in the state. So we start with some definitions in Section 1, and really what we're doing here is measuring first of all, the extent of the problem and asking, those that generate food waste to account for it and in Section 1. And then in Section 2, we have some threshold amounts in terms of reduction of food waste management requirements. And what I'm very particularly excited about is Subdivision 2 in Section 2, which establishes for the first time a wasted food hierarchy, somewhat similar to the waste management hierarchy that we have. And so obviously number one is to reduce the amount generated at the source. So that gets, at that problem. And then there's some reporting requirements. And finally, Mr. Chair, we have methodology for quantifying surplus food and food waste, and some requirements of those who are producing it. And I'll have the PCA, kind of fill in the blanks if there are some questions of committee members. And finally, what we want to do in the amendment is to, again, because this is such an urgent problem, we've heard about methane in landfills. A lot of that is coming from this organic waste, from this food waste. So we want to move up some of the implementation dates, and we have some further clarification of a definition of unfit or otherwise not acceptable products. And that's pretty much the bill, Mr. Chair, and happy to answer questions, but also happy to have the PCA fill in some of the blanks.
Thank you. Why don't we start with the PCA first, and then we'll go to the other testifiers. Commissioner Kudelka.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. For the record, again, my name is Kirk Kudelka, Assistant Commissioner with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. I want to thank Representative Hornstein for partnering with us on this idea. Collectively, Minnesota has a waste problem. We've talked about it before. Nearly 18% of what we throw away is food waste, with another 6% being those that are compostable materials that often accompany it. Think of paper plates and other types of things. In a landfill, food waste breaks down and produces methane, which is a greenhouse gas with heat trapping potential 25 times greater than carbon dioxide. And according to EPA, 58% of the methane that's released from a landfill comes from wasted food that's in that landfill. It's an enormous economic loss, too. A national nonprofit known as ReFed estimates that 38% of all food produced in the U.S. went unsold or uneaten in 2022 and represents $473 billion in economic loss. In addition, 7.1% of Minnesota households face food insecurities in 2022. And Hunger Solutions Minnesota recorded 7.5 million visits to Minnesota food shelves in 2023. That is the third year in a row that hasn't been the record high. So instead of a landfill, our surplus food should be going to feed people. Of the food and compostable materials that go in our trash, 46% of the food it was still edible, and 6% of it was never opened or even expired. The results is this food could be going to people or animals or compost facilities or anaerobic digestion to recover the value, especially from those inedible food scraps. In order for entities to invest in building compost facilities or anaerobic digestion, they need assurances they will have access to feedstock, in this case, wasted food. That's what this bill helps assure for those business opportunities. Under the proposal, generators of large amounts of wasted food would no longer be able to dispose of it without first following the preferred options in EPA's wasted food scale. As Representative Hornstein mentioned, that's section 2 on how to best handle the materials. They would need to implement strategies to make sure food isn't wasted to start with, and then donating surplus food to various entities. And finally, for food scraps and that, have that be recycled. In the proposal, there are off-ramps, and there are also, just want to note that 10 other states have enacted similar laws. There's 11th state that is soon to do so in order to put food waste to better uses. Thank you, Chair and Committee, for your time.
Thank you. First up, Andrea Lovell, Minnesota Environmental Justice Table. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Hansen, members of the committee. My name is Andrea Lovell, speaking for the Minnesota Environmental Justice Table. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today in favor of House File 4932 and would like to thank Representative Hornstein and the MPCA for bringing forward this bill. I'm a master of avoiding food waste in my house. I am super trained on avoiding any food going into the trash. My toddler pushes my buttons on this, but I still think I do pretty good. I will use so much out of a rotisserie chicken from Costco. For that $5, we get 3 meals and 4 quarts of bone broth. Only when I've used up every last bit of food, the scraps will go in the garbage. I'm proud of my ability to scrape every bit of value out of my food, and I also know that I'm not the major culprit of food waste. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization at the UN, global food waste is responsible for 3.3 gigatons of greenhouse gas emissions, which, if global food waste was its own country, it would be the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gas in the world. And that's because food waste is landfilled and incinerated as opposed to being used for viable purposes. Organic material is valuable. I want to draw your attention to the first deadline in this bill, which is January 1st, 2025, and that is 104 tons per year. The average American household wastes about 300 pounds of food a year. Just some quick math here. We're talking about wasters of 208,000 pounds of food, or in other words, 693 times the waste of the average American household. We aren't talking about my rotisserie chicken carcass here. We're talking about grocers and restaurants who landfill and incinerate edible food or usable composting material. Personal responsibility only gets us a very small portion of the way. We need accountability on the biggest wasters. This bill creates a system where the infrastructure is not currently in place to be able to tackle the biggest food wasters for the biggest possible impact. Please support House File 4932. Thank you.
Thank you. Marita Bujold, Minnesota Environmental Justice Table. Welcome.
Thank you.
Proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Marita Bujold. Thank you for providing an opportunity to consider public policies to prevent food waste. I would first like to acknowledge the leadership for this important issue from local organizations and communities. In recent years, local food initiatives have organized to address the impacts of enduring food insecurity and the absence of a just, sustainable, and responsive food economy. These leadership initiatives vary in their focus and operations, but they share a common purpose: normalizing access to affordable sources of healthy, culturally relevant foods in the places where we live, work, and go to school. One focus of their work is to prevent food waste by rescuing it before it is disposed of and delivering it to locations where it can either be offered for immediate use or to kitchens where it can be prepared into meals or preserved for future use. This strategy has proved to be very effective for both preventing waste and meeting the demand for food. But currently, there is no system to support this strategy. To be successful, to manage the volume of food destined for disposal, and to normalize access to healthy food everywhere, every day, we need an economy designed for that purpose. What we're really talking about here is creating an energy management system for food. Food is energy. As with other energy sources, our challenge is to manage it for our benefit sustainably. Successful management requires an economy that employs community members to operate a coordinated system which connects every grocery store and business where food needs to be rescued to conveniently located kitchens equipped for meal preparation, food preservation, and on-site storage. With a coordinated, decentralized approach, kitchen staff members can plan and be ready to sort food deliveries for their specific purposes. I'm hearing the knocking sound, so I'm just going to say that I hope this committee and your colleagues will support in this bill an economy that would do what I described. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jill Sims, Hospitality, Minnesota. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, members. My name is Jill Sims. I'm the Director of Government Relations at Hospitality, Minnesota. We appreciate the opportunity to weigh in on House File 4932 and respectfully express our opposition. Between the weight of the pandemic and the various mandates placed on our operators over the past 2 years, there is simply too much on their plate. This legislation will require virtually all businesses to manage, track, and report food surplus and waste, a task that is a tall order for many small businesses across the state of Minnesota. This is another onerous regulation when our operators are already struggling to juggle the many hats that they wear. This legislation was a surprise to us and not something that the hospitality industry is prepared for. We do have many members that partner with local food shelves or farmers to use excess food to feed livestock. For example, the St. Paul River Center has staff and capabilities to add a green team to hosted events. That team works with exhibitors to separate leftover items with the goal of keeping as much food out of the waste stream as possible. The role of the team is to help sort donations and determine what is eligible, subject to health department regulations, to be donated to the local community through food shelf partners or what could be composted or recycled. However, a challenge that we see is our metro area operators have significantly higher access to options when it comes to these partnerships as opposed to our greater Minnesota members. This legislation seems to cause more problems and confusion than solutions. What do we do if there are not enough food recovery providers? Do we measure per location or business? What happens if your business grows exponentially? Say you gain popularity on a social media platform and your sales skyrocket. Inevitably, your waste is going to increase even if you are managing that waste extremely well. We appreciate the conversation around food sustainability and are proud of our members who partner with local organizations to ensure that no food is wasted and they help fill the hunger needs in our communities. However, adding another convoluted reporting mechanism is just another mandate to tip the scales against our industry that is desperately trying to recover from the pandemic. Members, we respectfully ask that you weigh the implications of how this bill will impact your community, also beyond restaurants, considering grocery stores, hotels, or hospitals, and more. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamie Fuel, Minnesota Grocers Association. Welcome.
Thank you. Chair Hansen, members of the committee, good afternoon. I'm Jamie Poole, President of the Minnesota Grocers Association. Thank you for the opportunity today to speak on House File 4932. Minnesota has a unique culture of homegrown grocers and convenience stores, many of whom are independent, multi-generational, and locally owned. We have over 300 member companies with 1,300 locations statewide. Our industry provides around 150,000 union and non-union jobs. Social and environmental responsibility is a priority for our members. As an industry, we have been committed to implementing infrastructure with a goal to achieve zero waste. For decades, we have worked through local farmers on the food to feed programs. Through thoughtful and diligent stakeholder work, we are able to repurpose much of our food to local charities to ensure that every ounce that can be used is used. Our industry takes great pride in its approach to waste reduction. First, it's the right thing to do. Second, to be honest, tipping costs are very expensive and food is heavy. 39.7 million pounds last year were donated to Second Harvest Heartland alone. Our efforts have many benefits and they're voluntary. The proposal before us today creates an entirely new mandated program with additional reporting, separate requirements, and potential fines. We're concerned about the unintended consequences of structure that's already working well. There are practical challenges of what can be done today with food waste. There are a limited number of food recovery organizations if we're retooling the work that's happening. The capacity of hauling food scraps is limited. An anaerobic digestion system is an evolving process, and it uses a tremendous amount of water, another precious resource. It does have limitations, and it's a long way from being widely commercially available. The goal of food waste diversion has been an industry priority for years. We know firsthand, that this issue needs multiple stakeholders at the table to ensure our legislative solutions do not come with latent and unintended consequences. We weren't able to secure a meeting with Representative Hornstein due to the speed of this legislation, but we look forward to a collaborative partnership as this process continues. Thank you.
Thank you. Toya Lopez. Toya Lopez. Bruce Newstad, Minnesota Retailers Association. Welcome.
Thank you. Chair Hansen, members of the committee, my name is Bruce Newstead with the Minnesota Retailers Association. We're a trade association consisting of about 1,200 retail stores across the state, including Main Street retailers, regional retailers, and some retailers with a national presence. I'd like to express our concerns today regarding Representative Hornstein's House File 4932 relating to the management of food waste. We understand the intent behind this bill and recognize the importance of responsible waste management. However, we believe the bill as currently drafted has broad and far-reaching impacts, especially on small retailers across the state. We believe the reporting requirements outlined in the bill are expansive and burdensome for small businesses. The process of weighing and tracking food waste scraps interferes with the current responsible practices already in place at many retailers across the state. Furthermore, the collection and storage requirements could have negative impacts on daily operations. Instead of imposing such stringent regulations, we prefer a collaborative approach focused on partnership and education for both large and small generators of food waste. By working together, we can develop effective strategies to reduce waste while also considering the practical implications for retailers, especially small businesses. The Minnesota Retailers Association thinks the next natural step would be to initiate an education-focused program in partnership with stakeholders before moving forward with such a strong regulatory measure as outlined in Representative Hornstein's bill. This approach would allow a more tailored and sustainable solution that takes into account the unique challenges faced by retailers today. Mr. Chair, thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak for or against the bill? Anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak for or against the bill? Members, questions? Oh, we have a list. Representative Gilman.
All right, thank you, Chair. So real quick, as I'm looking through here, I'd like to ask the author of the bill, what entities would this bill likely apply to?
Representative Hornstein.
The generators of the wasted food, and I would ask the PCA to have some specific examples.
Kudelka.
Thank you, Chair, and committee members. For the record, again, my name is Kudelka with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Through the tiered system, there's many different avenues. Some of the examples that were brought up earlier were grocery stores and that. For instance, medium-sized grocery stores would not kick into about 18 tons of food waste. And smaller grocery stores wouldn't kick into about the 6 tons. So depending on the very largest ones would kick in on 104 tons would be food manufacturers, processors, super centers, wholesale venues, those type of locations would be those that fit in the largest group of over 104 tons each.
Representative Gilman.
Okay, thank you so much. I see, so like on line 3.22, it says to apply the following schedule to a person who, and it just says to a person. So it could apply, then you're saying, to schools, hospitals, convenience stores, restaurants, things on that scale, instead of just to a person.
Mr. Kudelka.
Mr. Chair and committee members, correct. We use the definition of the statute of person, which would include all those entities if they created waste over those thresholds. Some of those may not pass that threshold.
Representative Gilman.
Okay, so, so then this kind of just rolls into the next piece of it too. So in order to comply with this new law, since like in here, there's no specific entities that are listed, it's basically based on tonnage. How will the MPC, will it be the MPC that notifies people on this new law? Will there be education on it? How would this new regulatory, how would this roll out? That's my question.
Commissioner Kudelka.
Mr. Chair and committee members, the first role would be for MPCA to help with the education efforts. The bill is structured in a way that it anticipates that entities would use time and do its own measuring and scaling to determine where they fit in that continuum. So that's the first part of the duties of under anyone that's creating food waste that's over 5 tons per year, to help be able to determine where they may fit into that. The education that provided by the agency would help them be able to determine how to measure their food waste and also be able to give other examples that we know of industries to give them a ballpark, but they'll be able to help look at their own amount of waste. Even going through that exercise, we have found, and other states have found, greatly reduces the amount of food waste created at a facility just by looking and measuring the amount of food waste they create.
Representative Gilman.
Well, that kind of helps me just to understand this a little bit. I'd be curious how the schools would respond to this, as they've got a lot more food waste, after this past year. So, thanks.
Representative Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make, a kind of a statement and a shout out. We do this in Mankato, and we, Natasha Frost and Ben Greer over at Grace Lutheran Church do a very good job of the food recovery. They work kind of with a lot of organizations in Mankato. They've taken tons and tons of food and turned it into meals for people who are homeless, for students at college that don't have access to meals. They work with the food shelves. In fact, sometimes food shelves get massive amounts of zucchini. Well, what can you do with a massive amount of zucchini? You can only make so many loaves of zucchini bread, right? But you can take that and you can, in a commercial kitchen, turn that into a ready-to-eat meal, incorporating the zucchini with some chicken and something else. And then those food shelves have meals ready to eat to serve the people as well. I wonder, in my specific community, in my specific district, how many people have large amounts of food waste that could be diverted to something like this, where we already have an entity that's doing this and an opportunity to get more food to take care of the people who really need it. And so I think this is an opportunity for us not to just look at it as a regulatory burden, but also as an opportunity to pair two people together, somebody that has food waste that has to be thrown away, and somebody that can take that food waste and still use it and turn it into something valuable for the community. So that's what I wanted to say, and I think this is a good opportunity for us.
Commissioner Kudelka.
Mr. Chair and committee members, we agree. Wooden Spoon is one of the organizations that is a tremendous asset where they bring this material in and then make it available to various folks. And part of it is that matchmaking that you talked about. The bill does have, on page 7, it was mentioned, if there's not a location that's close to it on line 7.10 through 7.14 or capacity for someone to take it, there is an off-ramp there for those businesses. I know that was mentioned earlier, and as he mentioned, some places may not have capacity, and that has been built into the law.
Representative Brand.
That's it. Thank you.
I do want to note, we did have one testifier, and is Toya Lopez here now? So I want to give her the opportunity to testify. So we did call earlier, but this is a hard place to get around. So welcome, and state your name for the record.
Thank you very much for your understanding. Hello, everybody. I'm Toya Lopez. And essentially, I'm here testifying on behalf of health professionals for a healthy climate on zero waste, especially as not only like diversion of organics and food and such can help minimize the amount of trash that is then being incinerated or also producing methane gas. And also with this bill in a more aggressive timeline, we can help as well address the social determinants of health. That would be food insecurity. And so this is also important not only for the future health of Minnesotans, but also for the present health of Minnesotans in being able to nourish themselves as well with that diversion.
Thank you. We'll go back. Any questions? So we'll go to Representative Jacob and then Representative Purcell.
Well, thank you, Chair Hansen. So my district, of course, Rochester, Minnesota, two things I'm thinking of is their very successful waste to energy system that they have there, and being a med city with sanitation being a high priority. One of the obvious things seems to me the collection, and how is that going to be managed to keep things sanitary, and what that could possibly draw in smell and rodents or whatever what might be attracted to this, why it's being contained by a lot of different entities and institutions. So those two questions: what's going to happen if you're, I think Representative Hornstein, you said there's a 33%, is that the number you used? So if that creates a 33% reduction in the energy supply that's generated at the waste to energy facility, how is that going to be addressed? And then also the sanitation issue, those two pieces.
Well, I can speak to the first, and maybe Mr. Kudelka could speak to the second. Look, the waste management hierarchy really emphasizes waste reduction, reuse, recycling. I think that, this is one area where you look at a third of the waste stream that we can, I think, really attack in a way that we haven't before. I mean, 5% of this, only 5% is composted. So, our goal is to get this out of landfills and garbage incinerators. It's not even good fuel for incineration, wet waste. So, that's the goal here. In terms of, I think you're describing medical waste, and there's other ways of. I'm sorry, you're not. Are you? You're describing food that's generated in the hospital?
Yes.
I think that would be also a candidate for this, but there may be some unique attributes that Mr. Kudelka could respond to.
Commissioner Kudelka.
Mr. Chair and committee members, the hospital setting is like other settings where they're already handling this waste. It's going to trash. So it's just providing another type of container next to it to be able to handle that food in the same way. In terms of outside of those type of facilities, compost facilities, anaerobic digestion facilities, will need a solid waste permit. And those permits also look at some of those issues that you've talked about, such as litter, odor, or those type of pieces. So that system, it's usually utilizing much of the system that's already in place. What we're trying to do, as Representative Hornstein mentioned, is really just getting it to turn the other way. Go to the compost facility, or better yet, if we can preserve the food, go to a food bank or some other helpful venue.
Representative Jacob.
I just would, thank you. I just would comment that the city of Rochester has a no-sort stream that's working very well for them. It's sanitary, and you're going to dismantle this system that's working well for them, generating a lot of electricity, and it is sanitary, and it seems like a step in the wrong direction.
Commissioner Kudelka.
Mr. Chair and committee members, the one sort is for non-organic materials, so it wouldn't touch the one single sort type of materials for traditional recyclables. It would be setting up agreements with food shelves to take materials that are edible or to a compost facility. Olmsted County is one who's exploring a number of projects like this, including a CAP project to look at organics collection at their waste energy facility, because they realize that is a better stream forward, and their long-term goals is to have that go to anaerobic digestion to be able to more fully capture the energy from it from the biogas.
Representative Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chair Hornstein, for bringing this bill. I think that this is such a wonderful way to solve a lot of problems at the same time. So in my community, there's a community action center. We have a lot of hungry people across Minnesota. There are farms who donate produce from their farms directly to these pantries, or as we call them in Minnesota, food shelves. And I think that in the Agriculture Committee, we talk about farm to school and wanting people to have access to affordable and high quality food. And there is just an incredible amount of waste. And in my experience, the issues with like sanitation, for example, happen when they are mixed in with other trash versus keeping it separate, like the way that we do here at this building. And so instead of some of these food pantries that offer these services to hungry Minnesotans to be able to, maybe they won't need to come and ask for as many dollars if there is a source for them to be able to provide this food for folks. So also just on the compost side itself, to make sure that we are continuing to build up the soil with this organic matter that could be coming from these from a program like this, instead of burying the foods into landfills that we won't be able to have regenerate our soil and create soil health. So thank you. I also really appreciate the hierarchy of the waste stream, and thanks for bringing this bill.
Representative Hornstein.
Well, thank you very much. Again, Mr. Chair and Representative Purcell, I think that hierarchy is really important. And I'll just conclude by saying...
We got one more question.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Hornstein. I don't have a lot of positive things to say about this bill, and I'll delve into that. I'm very sorry. There's a long history with MPCA and food waste, and I hope we can talk a little bit about that today. And Mr. Kudelka, you attempted to meet with me earlier, and I was here. Unfortunately, we didn't connect, but I'm assuming that it might have been a meeting that could have addressed a few of my questions today. And it starts with I'm hoping capacity that when I say hoping, I'm hoping the capacity is there to actually recycle these materials. And of course, the history for me personally is with a facility in Good Thunder that was attempting to do that, and they were recycling up to, or processing up to 41,000 tons a year. And the problem there was PFAS. And we should probably talk about that a little bit today. But before I do, my comment would be this, Representative Hornstein, this bill creates an entirely new set of rules for folks trying to provide food to people to try and follow. It is burdensome. It is costly. Clearly, it'll raise the price of food for people who are already facing increased prices and costs. And I don't know why we're introducing something like that at a time like now. Hopefully MPCA can address the concerns related to capacity and PFAS. Maybe all those problems have been solved and there's nothing to worry about. I hope that's the case. But just the regulatory side of this, for those that were testifying earlier, my jaw's got to hit in the table. Like, what in the world are we doing? It's really, really challenging to hear bills like this. I get it. It's a nice idea that you can just regulate all these industries into compliance, but there is a cost. And especially when you have industries that have attempted to solve this problem that now have had to close their doors because of other regulatory problems on the backside. So those are my comments, and just to reiterate my question for Mr. Kudelka relative to capacity, if we could start there.
Commissioner Kudelka.
Mr. Chair and committee members, the capacity issue is addressed in the bill in lines 7.10 through 7.14. So if there's not, for instance, a food shelf or food pantry that's available for food that could still be eaten, they would not have to, the food waste generator would not have to comply with this. So we're really tailoring this to where capacity is. A bill like this, which has been passed in 10 other states, really then also helps set a market direction for those other types of facilities to expand because they know have a feedstock. To make investment in a compost facility or an anaerobic digestion facility, you need to know the feedstock there. It's a chicken and egg piece, right? You need the feedstock coming in, and you also need a facility to get to it. This really helps set the direction and tone that there will be this feedstock available for folks to make these business investments. So this will use the capacity that's there and coming online, where we have contacts with local governments and private entities that are expanding capacity for anaerobic digestion and composting. And when that is filled up, then the requirements then are no longer in place. But this will send a signal for additional capacity to continue to be built in Minnesota as a result, as it has in other states.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my first question, Mr. Kudelka, following that answer is, have those 10 other states address the problems related to PFAS in food? And can we get a list of those 10 other states that have done this? Because I'd really love to see that if all of the claims being made about this bill today are actually reflected in data.
Commissioner Kudelka.
Mr. Chair and committee members, the first state was Connecticut, passed it in 2011. It's Connecticut, Vermont, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, California, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Washington, New Hampshire, and Maine is on the verge of passing it this year. So states, heavy rural, heavy urban, and in various parts of the country have passed it in terms of being able to implement this for some states now over a decade.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The second half of that question was have those states resolved the problems with PFAS in food?
Commissioner Kudelka.
Mr. Chair and committee members, a number of these states have also, like Minnesota, passed legislation that would ban PFAS in food packaging, which is, as we've done a study here at MPCA, is really the largest source of PFAS going into compost facilities. If we can remove that, the lower amount is in the food products. All states are working together on how we can address PFAS in items, but the first is removing those larger sources, and the legislature has done that with the passage of that bill 2 years ago.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize. I'm going to have to continue. Mr. Kudelka, the question was, have those states solved the problem? I'm sure there's legislation being passed everywhere to address PFAS in food and other products similar to what we have seen passed here in Minnesota. But do we know if those states have solved that problem? Because PFAS is persistent. It is in food. So if it's, I'm assuming, still there, what have they done to solve that problem? And the problem earlier that I was referencing, generally referring to another facility, was that the food waste contained enough PFAS that it was in leachate, which of course was no longer going to be allowed to be land applied by MPCA, and was then required to go to a permitted facility, and in that facility it was diluted and discharged directly into the Mississippi. So I'm not sure what the answers might be in a technical discussion, but I'd sure love to know if those states have actually solved that other problem, because it doesn't sound like Minnesota had any, and I'm going to say specifically MPCA had any real solutions for those facilities with this problem.
Commissioner Kudelka.
Mr. Chair and committee members, all those states are in various different spots with how they're addressing for PFAS in solid waste. The facility in question, there were questions about PFAS, but ultimately they were no longer able to have a county permit or a state permit because of issues dealing with odor and accepting other materials that had problems with the operation of the facility. And so because of those issues is why ultimately the facility ended up closing in addition to PFAS. In terms of Minnesota dealing with PFAS, we are ahead of other states. I mentioned again, the Minnesota MPCA has done a study, and the largest source going into compost facilities when we studied it is food packaging that's going in there. Minnesota has now banned that, PFAS in food packaging. So as we're trying to reduce what may come in the runoff as that you were referring to, the best way to do that is pollution prevention. That's removing it through that food packaging as we continue to move forward. We'll continue to look for other avenues too to reduce it, but that is the largest source by orders of magnitude.
Representative Heinzman.
I'll just finish with this, Mr. Chair. Thank you. In other words, no other state apparently in testimony today, given the opportunity, MPCA could not cite a single state that has solved this problem, even though we're passing new regulatory requirements on industry and businesses that will undoubtedly increase the cost of food. Without a solution relative to the PFAS side of this, which maybe there may be some things that we have done to reduce that amount, we're still going to have the problems in this subject area as PFAS is persistent in these products and in food.
Commissioner Kudelka.
Mr. Chair and committee members, Minnesota is a leader because of legislature and actions of reducing what is going into compost facilities to remove PFAS. The solution is reducing it from the source, and that's what the legislature here has been able to do. PFAS in food is something that we all continue to tackle as we move forward, but that is the best first step, and that Minnesota is the leader compared to those other states.
Representative Hornstein, any closing comments?
Well, I really appreciate the discussion and some of the input that was given here by industry and particularly Representative Heinzman. I thought you addressed some very important questions. So this is a bill that is being laid over, and I'm really willing to work with some of the issues that have been raised here, and I'll probably scale back some of the regulatory issues. But let's look at this as a start to addressing an absolutely urgent issue that we haven't addressed. And this is, pardon the pun here, but low-hanging fruit of waste management here. We have not done a good job of composting. I view composting as kind of where recycling was in the 60s and 70s. And so this is really the frontier where we have to make a difference. And I think there's some concepts in this bill that can move us forward, and maybe some other things that have to be changed or dropped. But I appreciate, Mr. Chair, your hearing this bill and continue to work with you and other stakeholders in making sure that we can move something forward this year.
I renew my motion, House File 4932 as amended be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill. The bill is laid over. Next up, Representative Kraft. House File 3457, deadline established for state agencies to issue permits. We've allocated about 10 minutes for this. I will move House File 3457 be laid over. Representative Kraft, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. So with the increase in renewable energy, electric vehicles, and building electrification, our grid will need to carry a lot more electricity. The backbone or superhighways of this grid are high voltage transmission lines, and we need more of them. The process of building them can take 5 to 10 years and can be loosely divided into figuring out where they go, or siting, permitting, and implementation. This bill is about a part of the permitting process, trying to make it a bit faster and more predictable. By the way, building them faster saves ratepayers money on congestion costs and allows more renewables to get on the grid faster. MISO, the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator that operates the electric transmission system in a large part of Minnesota and in portions of 15 states in the Midwest, had the highest grid congestion of any electricity market in the country. In 2022, that was wholesale prices were $3.7 billion higher in MISO due to inadequate transmission capacity. So doing some of this faster can translate to savings for Minnesota ratepayers. In building out new transmission lines, the Public Utilities Commission is the key agency that has to approve projects. However, often other agencies are involved and have to approve permits. I'm talking about DNR, MPCA, Commerce, Department of Ag, MnDOT. These permits happen after the PUC gives their approval and can sometimes take many months and cause delay. This bill would require most agencies to make permitting decisions within 60 days of the PUC's final decision, subject to them having received a completed permit application. One note, there was an amendment coming that did not get drafted in time that address some issues that DNR raised about needing a 120-day time to approve a permit and 60-day response time. So we'll address that as the bill is laid over. And I did also hear before that MPCA may have some questions as well, so I'll deal with that after this as well. So I want to point out that these are big projects that are not surprises to agencies, as they are typically engaging at some level with them during the PUC process. So this is not asking additional work to be done, it's just some planning to make sure that these real critical things can happen more predictably.
Looks like we have a couple testifiers, Joe Henderson, Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and Alexis Donath, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Welcome, and state your name for the record.
My name is Joe Henderson. I am the Division Director for the Lands and Minerals Division at the Minnesota DNR. Thank you, Chair Hansen and committee members. I'll keep this brief with an understanding that we have been working with Representative Kraft and others for some time now. This bill has substantial impacts on the DNR. Large energy projects may have long linear power lines which cross many parcels of land. As many of you know, the DNR manages 5.6 million acres of public lands. All public waters, lakes, rivers, streams, easements, roads, ditches on state land, and any threatened and endangered species, even on private lands. The permits and approvals for those licenses and crossings of all those properties, especially for a long linear project, take time. We've had discussion on that, and it appears as though amendments will be made. We have asked for a longer time, a 60-day completeness review, as well as a 120-day issuance timeline from a complete application. We think that we can manage even those large linear projects by just adjusting, some of our internal priorities. So I look forward to the amendment and the new language.
Thank you. Alexis Donath, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency.
Mr. Chair and committee members, for the record, my name is Alexis Donath. I serve as Legislative Coordinator at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Thank you to Representative Kraft for bringing this bill forward and for seeking to advance the infrastructure that's necessary to build out Minnesota's clean energy system. Ensuring Minnesota has the cleanest electricity available is a key element of Minnesota's climate action framework. It is one element of the work that's needed to reduce emissions and to provide clean electricity so that other sectors are able to reduce their emissions. MPCA has had productive conversations with the author regarding our initial questions about how this requirement affects the agency's regulatory oversight responsibilities for these types of projects, and we thank the author for his openness to these conversations. The bill in its current form resolves the majority of our questions. As the bill moves forward, we would like to continue to work with the author, as mentioned, to ensure that the deadline established in the bill is achievable and that the agency is able to perform its regulatory responsibilities within the time allowed. In many cases, a 60-day timeline will be fully achievable, but for some projects that are larger or more complex, a 120-day deadline will better align with the scope of the project and the time needed for regulatory review. A 120-day deadline also aligns with the agency's broader permitting timeliness goals as established in statute. Again, thank you for this bill and for the opportunity to testify. I'm happy to stand for questions.
Is there anyone else who would like to testify for or against the bill? Anyone else who'd like to testify for or against the bill? Representative Liz Lagarde.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to thank the author for bringing this forward. You use great words, predictability, getting it out faster because it's needed. That I just wish it was a little more broad, maybe, to affect all industries. But this is a good bill. Look forward to working with you, and wherever we can expand it to include more, that's what I'm aimed to do. But thank you for bringing this forward.
Any other questions, comments from members? Representative Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for the author of the bill. Just out of curiosity, I know there's a couple of bills moving through the House and Senate right now, or the other body right now, but how does this dovetail in with the Minnesota Energy Infrastructure Permitting Act that Majority Leader Long has? Is this going to complement it? Is this a part of that bill? Can you just give us a little background?
Representative Kraft.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Brand. So it's a complement. There was a significant stakeholder engagement process that the PUC organized, and that was looking at the process within the Public Utilities Commission. I brought a few bills that really looked outside that process, so I think it's a complement. It's possible that things get merged at some point in different places. I've heard that might happen in the Senate, but this is looking outside that.
Thank you.
Representative Scraba.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Kraft. Does the language in this, can we transpose it to other permitting? What I reference to, I've sat on planning commissions for years, and the rules were if you don't act on something in 60 days, it becomes automatic. With a carve-out, if you extend it, you can extend it one more time, and then it becomes law. What I'm curious about is we have a lot more permitting issues in northern Minnesota, Representative Liz Lagarde brought up. Can we take this rule, law, statute, and work it into other permitting?
Representative Kraft.
Mr. Chair, Representative Scraba, I think there was a couple questions in there. So on the language, there is not a, if you don't hit it, it automatically becomes approved. That's not in the language. And then right now, this bill is towards the construction and operation of large electric power facilities.
Representative Scraba.
Mr. Chair, Representative Kraft, the premise, the 60-day though, why 60 days?
Representative Kraft.
Mr. Chair, Representative Scraba, I had started actually at 30 and just in negotiation to see what's needed, what's realistic, because this is not about saying, more resources. It's about, you have these projects that are coming through that can be well seen and to be able to plan them a little bit better. So the 60 days, and then you also heard that a couple of the agencies have some concerns for some of their projects that it takes longer than that. So that would be an amendment. Yeah.
Representative Scraba.
Yeah, one other, we have members here that have been in the people in the audience for companies that have been in permitting process for over 10 years. I guess I'm looking at the state of Minnesota. Is there a way we can shorten this permitting process and use you as an example to get it to shorten? If it works for you, then it should work for others. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering if I could hear a little bit from DNR. I think that earlier somewhere I read that the 60-day turnaround might be a real challenge with current staffing, and if that could be addressed, that might be helpful to get some background on that, as well as I have another one or two questions beyond that.
Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Representative, again, the 60 days as in front of us now and drafted is quite a challenge for the DNR. We would have to bring on additional resources. That's why we have sought a 60-day completeness review with 120 days from a complete application for issuance.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would it be possible to get a list of what permits you do on projects like this?
Mr. Henderson.
Yeah, that is correct. And I can give you an idea right now, but we can follow up if you'd like. But so again, it's work in public waters, every land or water crossing of those state waters, of streams, lakes, rivers, easements, roads, ditches on state lands, all the 5.6 million acres of public land. We then also have to review for federal aid encumbrance. So if a piece of property was bought with federal lands, sometimes there are limited things that we can do on that property. So we have to check to see if there was federal aid in the original purchase of the property. Just checking to see if there's federal aid sometimes takes as many as 14 days. We have to work with the feds on that. We do threatened and endangered species, both on public lands and private lands. We do surveys for rare species and species of concern on public lands. We have to do the State Historic Preservation Office work, as well as with the Tribal Historic Preservation Office with those reviews. In summary, those are the handful of permits that are in our bailiwick at the DNR.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate that, and it's important for those watching and for members to at least get an idea of what we're going through trying to get through a permit, which I think we all agree, at least it seems that we all agree in one subject area, that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to reduce the number of days between an application being made and a permit being issued. Maybe DNR could go on to help us understand if this bill, if enacted without more staff, is it even realistic that this process could be followed in the timelines that are in the language?
We will need a fiscal note on this. Mr. Henderson.
Chair Hansen, we have a fiscal note on this. And so at the 10 and 60, we have a fiscal note in, and it would take at least, I can give you the specific number, but it's 6.05 FTE. As well as if we were to get another project in like the Great Northern Transmission Line, there is no way that we could make the 10-day limit without contract employees from the outside to help us meet that initial review to see if all of the permit application is complete.
Representative Kraft.
Mr. Chair, Representative Heinzman, so I appreciate the question, but that's not what the bill is going to do. There was an amendment submitted to address this, and it just wasn't completed in time. So we're going to incorporate that language, and my understanding with that is that that would take the fiscal note away.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that answer, Representative Kraft, but unfortunately without the amendment, I mean, it's going to be really difficult to have that discussion today as the bill is being heard today. I would just simply point out, as I've previously had to point out, as Representative Long's bill was being discussed in a press conference recently, it would be really nice if these kinds of bills that are being proposed by the DFL would address the concerns of all industry in Minnesota as opposed to singling out one sector.
To close.
Thank you all for the healthy discussion, and appreciate you laying over the bill.
I renew my motion that House File 3457 be laid over. The bill is laid over. Next up, House File 4322, Chair Vang, Sustainable Aviation Fuel Definition amended. Representative Vang, would you like to move your bill that House File 4322 be laid over?
Yes, so move, Mr. Chair.
Representative Vang, to your bill.
Mr. Chair, this is an agency bill from the Department of Ag. It's a fairly simple bill. So last year, the legislature, we established a $1.50 per gallon state income tax credit for businesses that produce or blend eligible sustainable aviation fuels in Minnesota for use in aircraft departing from Minnesota. And so with this bill, so currently, there's one criteria that eligibility criteria that the sustainable aviation fuel must be derived from biomass, and so this bill would expand the eligibility to include sustainable aviation fuels made from certain gases, carbon oxides, or from green electrolytic hydrogen. And I can take questions. Oh, I also have a testifier from the department too as well.
Thank you, Chair Vang. Andrea Vaubel, Minnesota Department of Agriculture. Welcome.
Thank you so much. For the record, my name is Andrea Vaubel. I serve as Deputy Commissioner at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. I first want to thank Representative Vang for carrying this agency bill for us. Many of you are familiar with Sustainable Aviation Fuel, or SAF as it's known, and you all were part of passing a nation-leading tax credit last year that we are in charge of certifying when it goes into effect in 2025. As mentioned, as of right now, the definition only allows fuel produced from biomass, but we are aware of a number of emerging technologies from companies. I think you have a letter from one in your packet right now, where it can be produced from other means. So it's sort of a second generation of fuels for SAF. The Biden administration in 2023 put out their SAF brand challenge, and they're asking and hoping for 3 billion gallons of production of SAF by 2030. As of right now, we have 22 million gallons produced in 2023 globally. So we have a long way to go to meet the demand for sustainable aviation fuel, and we are going to need everything and anything we can to make sure to meet that demand. So this just is allows us to have a little bit more flexibility in making sure that we can meet the emerging technologies coming out and meet the growing demand. So thank you so much to Representative Vang and to the Chair Hansen for listening to this bill.
Peter Wagenia, Sierra Club, North Star Chapter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Peter Wagenius. I'm Legislative Director of Sierra Club, the nation's oldest and largest grassroots environmental organization. We appreciate the opportunity to express concerns about the current wording of House File 4322, which will likely have unintended effects. I'll focus on hydrogen, but similar concerns also apply to gaseous carbon oxides. Whether or not hydrogen is helping or hurting the climate depends both on how it's produced and what it's used for. Current hydrogen supply, which is overwhelmingly produced from fossil fuels, is incredibly dirty. It's not helping. If the hydrogen industry can clean up its act, hydrogen could be an important tool in the future to decarbonize hard-to-decarbonize sectors in heavy industry like steel and cement. But the industry needs to be pushed to quickly shift to using new renewables. The problem with simply using the term green electrolytic hydrogen is that it requires a huge amount of electricity. It is so energy intensive, it would take approximately 90% of all existing renewable electricity to clean up existing hydrogen production. If the hydrogen producers don't make new renewable electricity, but instead take existing renewable electricity, then even green hydrogen will actually increase emissions. The renewable electricity which is lost to existing customers would need to be backfilled with dirty electricity produced from coal and gas. The solution advanced by Sierra Club, the National Resources Defense Council, and some hydrogen producers is to require green hydrogen to be produced using the 3 pillars of additionality, deliverability, and temporal matching. These are necessary guardrails. And here's the good news. The Biden administration just mentioned has already been wrestling with this challenge, and in December they proposed new rules for hydrogen production that largely embraced the 3 pillars. To ensure that green electrolytic hydrogen actually reduces emissions, Minnesota also needs a real definition of green hydrogen in statute. As noted earlier, an amendment to define green hydrogen could resolve the climate problem, but producing hydrogen from electrolysis also requires an immense amount of water, and that requires further consideration. We would welcome the opportunity to work with the author and the chair to ensure we achieve our intended effects. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to testify for or against the bill? Anyone in the audience? Members, any questions? I want to thank Chair Vang for having the bill come to this committee. There are environmental questions related to all of these issues. And I do have a couple questions for the Ag Department, since this is an agency bill from the Department of Ag. Ms. Vabel, so on line 1.19, it mentions gaseous carbon oxides derived from biomass. Are those carbon oxides intended to be, where would they be produced? How are they moved? Are they moved, what are they? Are they carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide?
Mr. Chair, my understanding is yes, and we do have our technical expert here too, so I might pull her up if it gets too technical, but yes.
And are they moved by truck or by pipeline, or how would they be moved to fuel production?
I'm going to ask Megan Lennon with our team to answer these.
Hello,
Welcome.
for the
State your name.
record, my name is Megan Lennon. I serve as the Energy and Environment Supervisor at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. And Mr. Chair, members, to your question, for sustainable aviation fuel produced from carbon dioxide or biogenic CO2, it is most likely these facilities would be co-located very closely to existing sources, like CO2 coming out of an ethanol plant resulting from fermentation.
Thank you. And then I'm not sure if I heard correctly on the amount of fuel that's needed. Was it 3 million gallons or 3 billion gallons?
Mr. Chair and members, the Biden administration's Sustainable Aviation Fuel Grand Challenge, they have a goal of producing 3 billion, billion with a B, by 2030, and then, I don't have the, as a larger amount by 2050. So it's a stepwise goal to get to the volume of sustainable aviation fuel needed domestically to reduce greenhouse gas emissions associated with aviation travel.
And then, so to identify sustainability, which is an environmental concern, how are we going to deal with land conversion, production, those type of things related to more production and processing of biomass?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members, in the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Tax Credit Statute, there, one of the tools that can be used to estimate or to calculate the greenhouse gas reduction of sustainable aviation fuel compared to a fossil jet fuel is the Argonne National Labs GREET model, and the federal government is coming out with a new version, hopefully the end of this month, that is tailored specific for sustainable aviation fuel, and that also includes or will include a land use change adder.
And then finally, do we have a definition in statute of green electrolytic hydrogen?
Mr. Chair, members, I do not think we have a definition in statute of green electrolytic hydrogen. Colloquially, it means hydrogen that is produced by splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen using renewable energy like wind energy.
So if we're providing tax credits, public money for this, we probably should have it defined. Representative Brand.
I just wanted to help out. It's by 2030, it's 35 billion gallons of SAF.
Representative Vang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to thank your time and the committee's time for hearing this bill.
Representative Vang renews her motion that House File 4322 be laid over. The bill is laid over.
Next on our agenda is House File 4135. And as for this House file, as previously announced, amendments, testimony, and discussion will be limited to Section 14 of the bill. Representative Hansen, would you like to move your bill?
Thank you. I'd move that House File 4135 be laid over.
And Representative Hansen, I believe you have an A5 author's amendment. Would you like to move your amendment and explain it?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move the A5 amendment to get this section of the bill into the shape I would like. It further defines the studies and work that would be done looking at PFAS in biosolids and fertilizer. I want to note for sure that my intent here is that it would be the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency that would do the testing, and we're asking for them to submit a report to the legislative committees. It would not be the individual sites producing sewage sludge.
Representative Hansen moves the A5 amendment to get the bill in the form the author would like. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed saying no. The motion prevails. The A5 amendment is adopted. Representative Hansen, to your bill as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to the bill section as amended, you know, often when we have testimony here from the agencies or from the interests or from members as we talk about leading the country, and this is one area where we're not. Other states have been looking at sewage sludge and PFAS. So Representative Heinzman, we had talked about PFAS earlier. I have put into your packet a bill or a recent article entitled "This Farmer's Livelihood Was Ruined by PFAS Contaminated Fertilizer That Few Midwest States Test For." And I would encourage you to read that. It's somewhat of a long article. You may be aware of articles from northeastern part of the country where this issue of sewage sludge being applied has resulted in farms being contaminated with PFAS from that sludge. So what I'm asking here in this bill is that initial start that we need to start looking at this. We need to start looking in sewage sludge for PFAS. You can't manage what you can't measure, and we have to start looking at it. So I'm asking for your support. I know the PCA is here. We still have some additional work to do on the amendment and trying to clarify and get a cost of what this will cost and where it would come from. And I believe the League of Cities is also here. So.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to testimony. First on my list is Amanda Bilek from the Minnesota Corn Growers Association. Welcome to the committee. Please get settled, and then please restate your name for the record, your title, and then proceed with your testimony, which will be limited to 2 minutes.
Yep. Chair Jordan and members of the committee, my name is Amanda Bilek. I'm the Senior Public Policy Director for the Minnesota Corn Growers Association. My testimony will be very brief. As we have discussed with the author, we do have several concerns with House File 4135, which center around the proposed fee increases on nitrogen fertilizer at a time of decreasing crop prices for Minnesota corn farmers, but with specifically to Section 14 as amended. So it's our understanding that the Environmental Protection Agency has developed validated analytical methods for PFAS and solids, including soils and biosolids, but it's still in the process of completing that risk assessment. We think the validated method is going to help aid the PCA in the testing that this bill is asking them to do. The only comment that I would make in the amendment would be that the timeline that's outlined in Section 14 could be difficult to report back to the legislature with recommendations and findings in February of 2025 with respect to that concentration and cumulative pollutant loading if EPA still hasn't completed their risk assessment. That risk assessment will help to determine what levels are concerning, not only for farmers who would be applying these products, but then also human health and the environment. So thank you so much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next on my list is Dana Vanderbosch, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Oh, this is not Dana Vanderbosch. It looks like it is Tom Johnson from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Johnson. Please state your name and title and then proceed with your 2-minute testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, my name is not Dana Vanderbosch. It is Tom Johnson, Government Relations Director with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. So I want to thank the author. We've had some great discussions over the last couple days. The agency does agree that the state needs to move forward in this area, that testing does need to start. The agency has started some work, and none of that has been announced yet, but we've started some work developing a plan in this area, and we're working with the chair on some language so that the work that we've been planning will align with what the bill is attempting to do. So I appreciate that ongoing conversation, and we'll continue to work with the author. Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to stand for questions.
Great. Thank you. Next, we'll go to public testimony. I see Mr. Johnson from the League of Minnesota Cities. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Craig Johnson with the League of Minnesota Cities. Very much appreciate the amendment from Chair Hansen. We We do think that this is an extremely important issue. We've been working very hard on this. Cities, obviously, outside of the metro area in particular, heavily rely on land application for how they get rid of the processed biosolids out of their wastewater systems. If we cannot land apply them, they must go in a lined landfill, which we don't have capacity for in this state. So it would be shipped to other states at great expense. We know from when we had to do that with sediment from stormwater ponds, cleaning out one stormwater pond cost $1.5 million to deal with the sediment. So this would be an extremely expensive recurring cost if we do not find ways for land application to work. So we are working with the agency. As many of you are aware, there's been a lot of work in identifying sources of PFASs, reducing those sources, and facilities, wastewater facilities in Minnesota are working very actively in their communities to work with sources they've identified as generators to reduce that. And of course, we have product reductions that are also going to be coming over the next 10 years. So we are working on that. I think this is a good step, but we do need to put a little more fine tuning to this language, I think. The agency is already working on looking at what other states, in particular Michigan and Wisconsin, are doing. Some of that works well with how we manage things here in Minnesota. Some of it doesn't match up right. So they need to get their own matrix figured out and figure out what our triggers would be for various types of action. But I do think they are going to continue to work on that. And I do think that this timeline, I would agree with the previous testifier that it might be a little bit ambitious to get it done in this time. I would also ask that we not put too many guidelines on what they have to report, but the but not limited to on here is very helpful. So thank you, Madam Chair, and happy to answer any questions.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to testify on this bill? In that case, we will go to member discussion. First on my list is Representative Burkle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair Hansen, I think you kind of answered part of what I was going to ask you. Just curious about the fiscal note. But more than anything, just going back to Ag Committee, when we heard this in Ag, I think the intention was that we were going to move this to Health and then back to Ag. Is that still the intention?
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Chair Liebling does not need to see the bill. And because it is passed out of agriculture, Chair Vang still retains jurisdiction on that point. So she has that portion. So what we're talking about here is the
14. Yep.
14.
I'm good. Thank you.
Further discussion of the bill. Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's somewhat self-descriptive reading the language, but my question is more for the benefit of the public. In line 1.8, if we could, for everyone's benefit, define what I am probably going to mangle in my pronunciation. Representative Hansen, you probably know exactly what I'm mentioning. So if you wouldn't mind the pronunciation and then also the definition of that particular organic product being created, that would be great.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think we actually define, that's in another bill in Representative Vang's committee. We define malorganite. And Ms. Taylor is smiling because she had to, it was Mr. Sullivan that did it. So malorganite is, if you go into a hardware store, you will probably find a bag of malorganite that is sewage sludge or composted sewage sludge that is sold in a bag for home and garden use.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Representative Hansen, where does that come from?
Representative Hansen.
Well, it comes from people and goes through the septic or the sewage treatment facility. But just like the land applied sludge, we need to look at that too. We need to, we have to start looking at what's here, whether it's going out in a bag to somebody's garden or is going and being applied on alfalfa. So, and we, with the amendment, we're going to need a fiscal note on how much this costs and what it's going to take, and we're hoping to have that come from the work with the agency to make that happen.
Nothing further. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Hansen, closing comments.
Thank you, members. I'd encourage you to read that article that I handed out. Just it talks about some of the other states. This is an important issue. We're laying it over, going to continue working on it. I'd ask for your support and renew my motion laid over.
Representative Hansen renews his motion that House File 4135 as amended be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill. The bill is laid over. And members, seeing no further business before the committee, we are adjourned.